Chapter 10. His mother acted faster than expected. In less than a month, she was already lobbying the board. Roman didn't just sit back, but they were family, and his mother held a controlling share. Not many shareholders were willing to side with him against her. There was one exception. A man named Cale Voss. He was the largest minority shareholder in the group, after Roman's mother. I found out later when Roman discussed it with me. I'd originally written this character as Cassian Hale's professional rival, but now he'd become his potential savior. I told Roman I'd written Cale Voss as a self-made man, but Roman informed me that in this dream, Cale was a taciturn, calculating, middle-aged bald guy. I looked at Roman with a complicated expression. Why did you change all the characters in my novel so haphazardly in your dream? I bet Margaret was your idea of a femme fatale too, right? Roman was exhausted from the corporate battle. He turned his head wearily. I've been revising your novel even in my dreams. When you wake up, get it together, and do a proper edit. I ignored him. A few days later, Roman came back late and knocked on my door. He rarely visited me at night unless it was important, so I was immediately on edge. The first thing Roman said when he came in was, "Pack your things. We're leaving tomorrow night." I stared at him, bewildered. Where are we going? It turned out his mother had granted Roman a month's vacation, officially for personal time off, but actually to find a suitable new president while he was away. Roman used the opportunity to invite Cale Voss on a cruise. It was partly to discuss things away from his mother's prying eyes and ears. Cale Voss wouldn't help without conditions. You're going to discuss business. I can't help with that. I shrugged, not understanding. Wouldn't I just be in the way? Roman suddenly tilted his head and smiled, his expression screaming, "You said it, not me." I looked at him blankly. Could you be less obvious? I have to take you. Roman leaned lazily against the doorframe, the smile still playing on his lips. This trip will take at least 2 weeks. If I'm not here, who knows what Cassian Hale's mother might do to you. Seeing my reluctance, Roman looked at the ceiling and said slowly, "Maybe she'll show up one day, throw you out of the house, and never let you set foot in here again." I rolled my eyes. She doesn't own me. Why should she decide if I can come in or not? Roman's eyes sparkled with amusement. Do I get to decide? I nodded humbly. You're the boss. You have the final say. Then I'll pick you up tomorrow. Roman straightened up, walked out, and closed the door behind him. While packing, I discovered Roman's secret. Roman had great taste. Surprisingly great taste in women's clothing. Because this was Roman's dream, the clothes in my closet were products of his imagination. When I opened it to pack, I saw everything from evening gowns to casual wear, all in colors and styles that were far from typical guy-picking-for-a-girl choices. Even I was impressed. So I began to suspect Roman might secretly be a crossdresser. When I asked him, his face darkened, and he told me in a stiff tone that he had a sister who was a model and had been shooting magazine covers since high school. The car raced down the deserted road and barely made it before the ship's departure. While boarding, Roman called Cale Voss, who said he was waiting for us at the ship's bar. We found our room, hastily dumped our luggage inside, and headed to the bar. When I saw the middle-aged, bald Cale Voss, I felt a twinge of disappointment. I'd written him to be much more striking. While Roman talked with Cale Voss, I wandered around. The bar was decorated mostly in dark wood, very classy. The lighting was soft and dim. Being there felt hypnotic, like time had slowed down. As I wandered, I spotted a figure in the corner. She was wearing a red, backless, thin-strap dress with waterfall-like long hair. She stood in the shadows, holding a wine glass, her expression unclear. Her silhouette looked exactly like Margaret. Before I could get closer, The woman set her glass down on the bar, turned, and melted into the crowd. Wouldn't it be a crazy coincidence if Margaret were on board too? On the way back, I wanted to ask Roman if Margaret knew about his plans, but then I thought, maybe even Roman himself didn't know. Dreams are subconscious. No one controls them completely. Even if Roman's subconscious had let Margaret in, he might not be aware of it. It was past midnight when we returned from the bar. Walking through the corridor, I looked up and saw dense clusters of stars in the sky. Maybe I was experiencing one of his memories. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel so real. We entered the room one after the other. When I saw inside, I was stunned. Why hadn't I looked properly when we dropped the bags earlier? The room was spacious, with a large balcony. The key problem was the bed. There was only one. Is there anything more terrifying for a writer than sharing a bed with their editor? I looked at Roman, my expression one of utter resignation. Dude, didn't they have rooms with 2 beds? Nope. Then why didn't you book 2 rooms? If he dared say he was broke, I would throttle him. Booking 2 rooms would look weird, Roman said, hanging his jacket and sitting on the sofa to loosen his tie. Cale Voss brought some other investors. I heard one is related to the host. A married couple needing 2 rooms raises questions. I closed my eyes in resignation. Roman smirked. Afraid I'll do something? That made it infinitely more awkward. But Roman didn't seem to think so. Fine, he said, standing up and unbuttoning his shirt as he walked towards the bathroom. You can sleep on the floor then. I sat by the window, listening to the water run in the bathroom, feeling miserable. I don't know how much time passed before Roman emerged in pajamas. He towel-dried his damp, dark hair, his collars still neatly arranged. Roman casually draped the towel over the sofa, picked up the hairdryer from the desk, and started drying his hair. The room was so quiet, only the hum of the dryer filled the space. I was almost suffocating from the tension. How could he be so calm? Roman finished drying his hair, noticed I was still sitting rigidly on the edge of the bed, and walked over. My gaze slowly traveled from his slippers up his bare calves, past his waistline, over his slightly messy temples, and finally met his dark eyes. Roman said flatly, "You're sitting on the quilt. If you're not sleeping, go sit on the sofa." I stood up reluctantly. Can't you just sleep on the floor? Roman slid under the covers, creating a bulge in the smooth bedding. Apparently not. Knowing he couldn't hear my internal screaming, I dragged my feet heavily into the bathroom. When I came out, the figure on the bed wasn't moving. I tiptoed over. Roman's eyes were closed, his breathing even. He was fast asleep. Now, even the hair dryer excuse was gone. I scratched my damp hair dejectedly and looked at the sofa again. Without any bedding, I'd freeze in the second half of the night. I looked at Roman in the bed, my heart sinking. A surge of frustration and recklessness washed over me. I threw my towel down, turned off the light, and strode purposefully towards the bed. Then carefully lifted the corner of the duvet. The rustle of fabric was deafening in the quiet room. I held my breath, sat down, gently swung my legs up, and slowly lay back, finding the pillow. I finally lay down and let out the breath I'd been holding. But my initial movement had been too bold. Now half my arm was pressed against Roman's back. I felt like a bomb disposal expert, every move filled with dread. First, I shifted slightly away from him. Seeing he didn't wake, I shifted again, then prepared to roll over. Stop moving. I can't sleep. In the darkness, Roman's voice was like thunder. I froze, neck stiff, and slowly turned my head. Roman had turned over at some point, half his face buried in the soft duvet, looking at me with clear eyes.